Muslim man harassed at airport, then returns owning the airline. How will this story escalate? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. Omar adjusted the strap of his leather carry-on bag and glanced up at the digital departure board. His flight to Dubai was on time, and he had just enough minutes to grab a coffee before boarding. The airport was buzzing with the usual cacophony of announcements, rolling suitcases, and the low hum of excited travelers. Omar loved this energy. It reminded him of the endless possibilities of travel and connection. Dressed in an impeccably pressed white thobe and a red and white keffiyeh draped over his shoulder, Omar exuded confidence and calm. He was a successful businessman, well-traveled, and accustomed to the nuances of international airports. But there was always a small knot in his stomach when he approached security, a twinge of anxiety that had nothing to do with his actions and everything to do with how he might be perceived. As he placed his bag on the conveyor belt and stepped into the security line, he offered a polite smile to the officer stationed near the metal detector. The officer, a middle-aged man with a stern expression, barely acknowledged him. Next, the officer barked, waving him forward. Omar walked through the metal detector without issue, but before he could retrieve his belongings, another officer stopped him. This one, a younger man with a shaved head, gestured for him to step aside. "Sir, we need to conduct additional screening," he said, his tone devoid of warmth. Omar frowned slightly but nodded. "Of course. Is there a problem?" "No problem," the officer replied curtly. "Just a routine check." Omar was led to a small screening area off to the side. He noticed other passengers watching as he was singled out, their expressions ranging from curiosity to discomfort. A mother pulled her child closer as they passed, whispering something that made the little boy glance back at Omar with wide eyes. The young officer began rifling through Omar's carry-on bag, pulling out neatly folded clothes, a laptop, and a small leather-bound notebook. He inspected each item meticulously, pausing longer than necessary on the notebook. "What's this?" the officer asked, flipping through the pages. "My journal," Omar replied, his voice steady despite the growing irritation. "It's personal." The officer didn't respond. He continued flipping through the pages before setting the notebook aside and gesturing for Omar to hold out his arms. A pat-down followed, more invasive than Omar felt was necessary. He clenched his jaw but said nothing, refusing to give the officer the satisfaction of seeing his discomfort. Finally, the officer stepped back. "All clear," he said, though his tone lacked any sense of apology or acknowledgement. Omar began repacking his belongings, his movements slow and deliberate. As he zipped up his bag, he looked the officer in the eye. "I hope you treat everyone with this level of scrutiny," he said evenly. "Not just people who look like me." The officer's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. By the time Omar made it to his gate, boarding had already begun. He handed his ticket to the gate agent, who scanned it without comment, and stepped onto the jet bridge. As he found his seat in business class, he couldn't shake the heaviness in his chest. The experience at security was not new to him. It had happened before, in different airports, under different circumstances. But it never got easier. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes, trying to center himself. He reminded himself of the purpose of this trip: a meeting with potential investors for his latest project, an innovative tech solution aimed at streamlining logistics in the Middle East. It was an opportunity to expand his business and create jobs in underserved communities, something he was deeply passionate about. As the plane taxied down the runway, Omar resolved to push the incident out of his mind. He had more important things to focus on. But life has a way of testing even the strongest resolve. 2 weeks later, Omar found himself back at the same airport, returning from a successful business trip. His meeting had gone better than he could have hoped, and he had secured the funding he needed to move forward with his project. He should have been elated, but as he approached the security checkpoint, the knot in his stomach returned. This time the experience was even worse. The same young officer from before was on duty, and when he saw Omar, his eyes narrowed. Omar was pulled aside again, subjected to an even more invasive search, and interrogated about the contents of his luggage. Despite providing clear answers and maintaining his composure, Omar could feel the disdain radiating from the officer. "You seem to travel a lot," the officer said, his tone accusatory. "What exactly do you do for a living?" "I'm a businessman," Omar replied. "I run a logistics company." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Convenient," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "And what are you transporting this time?" Omar stared at him, incredulous. "I'm not transporting anything. I'm returning home from a business trip." The officer didn't respond. Instead, he continued to inspect Omar's belongings, his movements slow and deliberate. Passengers passing through the checkpoint glanced over, their expressions ranging from curiosity to discomfort. Omar felt his face flush with anger and humiliation, but he forced himself to remain calm. Finally, the officer waved him through, his expression unchanged. "You can go," he said as if he were doing Omar a favor. Omar gathered his things and walked away, his shoulders tense and his mind racing. As he boarded his flight, he couldn't shake the feeling of being treated as less than human, of being reduced to a stereotype based on nothing more than his appearance. That night, as Omar sat in his apartment, he replayed the incident in his mind. He thought about the countless others who had likely experienced similar treatment, who had been humiliated and dehumanized in the very places that were supposed to be gateways to opportunity and connection. "This isn't right," he muttered to himself, his jaw tightening. "This isn't how it should be." Omar's thoughts turned to action. He began researching the policies and practices of major airlines, security protocols, and the systemic biases that allowed such treatment to persist. The deeper he dug, the more determined he became to make a change. He reached out to his mentor, a retired entrepreneur named Mr. Malik, who had always been a source of wisdom and guidance. "This isn't just about me," Omar said during their meeting. "It's about creating a better experience for everyone, regardless of their race, religion, or background." Mr. Malik nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You're right, Omar. But change doesn't come easy. If you want to make a difference, you need to be strategic. Start by understanding the industry inside and out. Then, find a way to position yourself as a leader." Omar left the meeting feeling both inspired and daunted. He knew the road ahead would be long and challenging, but he also knew he couldn't stand by and do nothing. He had the skills, the resources, and the determination to make a difference, and he was ready to do whatever it took. Omar's journey toward change began with a single decision. He would turn his frustration into action. Instead of allowing the experience to embitter him, he resolved to use it as fuel for something transformative. He started by immersing himself in research, spending hours poring over reports, articles, and data about the airline industry and its practices. He learned about systemic biases in airport security, the lack of diversity in airline leadership, and the overwhelming number of complaints from passengers who felt profiled or mistreated. The numbers were staggering, but they only strengthened his resolve. "Change starts with knowledge," he told himself, scribbling notes in his journal late one night. "If I can understand the system, I can figure out how to change it." Omar's first step was to reach out to a network of contacts he had built over years in the business world. He scheduled meetings with aviation experts, former airline executives, and activists who worked to combat discrimination in travel. The conversations were eye-opening, revealing the deep-rooted challenges that would need to be addressed. One such meeting was with Sarah, a lawyer specializing in cases of discrimination in public spaces. She had spent years representing clients who had faced unjust treatment at airports and on airlines. "This isn't just about individuals," Sarah explained during their meeting. "It's about a culture that prioritizes stereotypes over humanity. And the only way to change that culture is from the top down." Omar nodded, her words resonating deeply. "Then that's where I'll start," he said. "I want to create a model of what this industry could be, a system that values fairness, inclusivity, and dignity." Sarah smiled. "It won't be easy, but if anyone can do it, it's you. Let me know how I can help." With Sarah's encouragement and the support of his mentor, Mr. Malik, Omar began formulating a plan. He knew that to make a real impact he would need more than ideas, he would need influence. That meant getting involved in the airline industry in a meaningful way. Using his business acumen and financial resources, Omar started acquiring shares in a major airline. It was a strategic move, one that allowed him to attend shareholder meetings and gain insight into the company's operations. He quickly realized that change wouldn't come from polite suggestions, it would require bold action. At his first shareholder meeting, Omar stood up to address the board. His presence, a confident man in traditional attire, immediately drew attention. "My name is Omar Khalid," he began, his voice steady. "I'm here as a shareholder but also as a traveler, one who has experienced firsthand the shortcomings of this industry. I believe we can do better. And I'm committed to ensuring that we do." There were murmurs throughout the room, some curious, others skeptical. Omar ignored the naysayers and continued. "Discrimination has no place in our airports or our airlines. It's not only morally wrong, but it's also bad for business. Passengers deserve to feel safe and respected, and I intend to make that a reality." By the time he finished speaking, the room was silent. Omar knew he had made an impression, but he also knew this was just the beginning. Over the next year, Omar continued to increase his stake in the airline, gradually becoming one of its largest shareholders. He used his position to push for changes, proposing initiatives like mandatory inclusivity training for staff and improved accountability measures for security protocols. While some of his proposals were met with resistance, others gained traction, thanks to his persistence and the growing support of allies within the company. One of those allies was James, a mid-level executive who had grown disillusioned with the industry's reluctance to address its flaws. James reached out to Omar after one particularly heated shareholder meeting. "I respect what you're trying to do," James said during their first conversation. "And I want to help. This industry needs a wake-up call, and I think you're the one to deliver it." With James's insider knowledge and Sarah's legal expertise, Omar began building a coalition of like-minded individuals who shared his vision. Together, they worked tirelessly to draft policies, organize campaigns, and rally support for systemic change. But Omar's ultimate goal was bigger than reforming a single airline. He wanted to create a new standard for the industry, one that prioritized inclusivity and respect over profit margins and outdated practices. To do that, he needed to take an even bolder step. One evening, as he sat in his office reviewing financial reports, an idea struck him. What if he didn't just advocate for change? What if he became the change? "What if I owned the airline?" he said aloud, the words both exhilarating and daunting. The idea seemed impossible at first. Buying an airline was no small feat, but the more Omar thought about it, the more it made sense. He had the resources, the expertise, and the determination. If he could acquire the airline, he could implement his vision from the top down, creating a model for what the industry could and should be. He shared the idea with Mr. Malik during their next meeting. "It's ambitious," Mr. Malik said, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "But I think you're ready. You've already proven you have the drive and the vision. Now it's time to take it to the next level." Encouraged by his mentor's support, Omar began assembling a team to explore the feasibility of the acquisition. It was a monumental task, requiring months of negotiations, financial maneuvers, and strategic planning. But Omar thrived under the pressure, driven by his belief in the importance of his mission. Finally, the day came when the deal was finalized. Omar Khalid was now the owner of the airline that had once treated him as an outsider. It was a moment of triumph, but also one of reflection. This wasn't just about him, it was about everyone who had ever been made to feel small, excluded, or invisible. At his first press conference as the airline's new owner, Omar stood at the podium, his expression calm but resolute. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter," he said, addressing a room full of journalists and stakeholders. "This airline will not only provide safe and efficient travel, it will set a new standard for inclusivity, fairness, and respect." He outlined his plans to implement comprehensive inclusivity training for all employees, establish a passenger advocacy program, and create a task force to address systemic issues within the industry. His vision was met with applause, but Omar knew the real work was just beginning. In the months that followed, Omar poured himself into transforming the airline. He personally oversaw the development of new training programs, worked closely with employees to ensure their voices were heard, and collaborated with advocacy groups to create a more equitable travel experience. One of his first major initiatives was the establishment of a Diversity and Inclusion Council, composed of employees, passengers, and industry experts. The council's mission was to identify and address biases within the airline's operations, from hiring practices to customer service protocols. "We're not just changing policies," Omar told the council during their first meeting. "We're changing mindsets. And that starts with us." The impact of Omar's efforts was profound. Passengers began noticing the difference almost immediately. Flight attendants greeted them with genuine warmth, security procedures became more transparent and respectful, and the overall atmosphere of the airline shifted from one of indifference to one of care. For Omar, the most rewarding moments came from the feedback he received from passengers. Letters and emails poured in from people who shared their stories of feeling seen, respected, and valued for the first time. One such letter came from a young man named Khaled, who had always dreaded air travel because of the way he was treated. "I never thought I'd say this," Khaled wrote, "but flying with your airline was a joy. For the first time I felt like a person, not a threat. Thank you for giving me that." Omar read the letter with tears in his eyes. This was why he had fought so hard, for people like Khaled, for everyone who deserved better. As Omar sat at his desk reading through letters of gratitude and support from passengers, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. Each message reinforced his belief that his efforts were making a real difference, not just in the airline he now owned but in the broader industry as well. But Omar was not one to rest on his laurels. He knew that systemic change required constant vigilance and improvement. His vision for the airline extended far beyond its current success, and he was determined to make it a lasting beacon of hope and fairness. One of Omar's first major decisions as the airline's owner was to host a company-wide summit for all employees. The goal was to share his vision, inspire unity, and give every team member, from pilots to baggage handlers, a chance to voice their thoughts and ideas. The summit was held at a sprawling convention center, with employees flying in from all over the world to attend. As Omar stepped onto the stage to address the crowd, he was greeted by thunderous applause. The room was packed with people of all backgrounds, their faces lit with curiosity and excitement. "Thank you all for being here," Omar began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Today is not just about the future of this airline, it's about the future of our industry and what we can achieve together." He spoke candidly about his own experiences with discrimination, the challenges he had faced, and the vision that had driven him to take ownership of the airline. His honesty resonated with the audience, many of whom had their own stories of feeling unseen or undervalued. "But this isn't just my story," Omar continued. "It's our story. And it's up to all of us to write the next chapter. Together, we can create an airline that truly represents the values of inclusivity, respect, and excellence." The room erupted into applause, and Omar felt a swell of pride. He knew that building a culture of fairness and inclusivity would take time, but he also knew that he had the support of his team, and that made all the difference. One of the most immediate outcomes of the summit was the creation of a new initiative called Passenger First. The program was designed to ensure that every passenger, regardless of their background or appearance, was treated with dignity and respect from the moment they stepped into the airport. The initiative included extensive training for all employees, from security staff to gate agents, focusing on empathy, cultural sensitivity, and conflict resolution. Omar personally attended several of the training sessions, eager to see the impact firsthand. During one session, a security officer named Carla raised her hand. "I'll be honest," she said, her voice hesitant. "I used to profile passengers without even realizing it. This training has made me see things differently. I want to do better." Her words struck a chord with Omar. He approached her after the session to thank her for her honesty. "Change starts with awareness," he told her. "And the fact that you're willing to reflect and grow says a lot about who you are." Carla smiled, her expression one of gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Khalid. I'll do my best to live up to your vision." While the internal changes within the airline were gaining momentum, Omar's work was also drawing attention from outside the industry. Media outlets began featuring his story, highlighting his journey from being harassed at an airport to becoming the owner of a major airline. He was invited to speak at conferences, participate in panel discussions, and even meet with government officials to discuss policies aimed at reducing discrimination in air travel. One particularly memorable moment came when Omar was invited to deliver a keynote speech at an international aviation summit. The event, attended by industry leaders and policymakers, was the perfect platform for Omar to share his vision on a global scale. Standing at the podium, Omar began with a simple yet powerful statement: "Air travel should be a bridge, not a barrier." He spoke about the importance of creating an industry that celebrated diversity and prioritized the humanity of every passenger. He shared stories of passengers who had been positively impacted by his airline's changes, using their experiences to illustrate the tangible benefits of fairness and inclusion. By the time he finished, the audience was on its feet, applauding with genuine enthusiasm. Omar had not only won their respect, he had inspired them to rethink their own practices and policies. As Omar's influence grew, so did his determination to expand his impact. He began exploring ways to partner with other airlines, airports, and advocacy groups to create industry-wide standards for inclusivity and fairness. His goal was ambitious: to ensure that no passenger anywhere in the world would ever have to endure the kind of humiliation he had faced. One of his most significant partnerships was with the International Air Transport Association (IATA), which agreed to collaborate with Omar on a global initiative to promote cultural sensitivity and equitable treatment in air travel. The initiative included the development of a certification program for airlines that met strict standards for inclusivity and customer care. "It's not just about doing what's right," Omar explained during a press conference announcing the partnership. "It's about creating an industry that thrives on trust and respect. When passengers feel valued, they're more likely to choose your airline, and that's good for everyone." The initiative was met with widespread support, and several major airlines quickly signed on to pursue certification. Omar's vision was becoming a reality, and the ripple effects of his work were being felt around the world. Back at his airline, Omar continued to lead by example, maintaining a hands-on approach to his work. He made it a point to interact with employees at all levels, from pilots to ground crew, ensuring that everyone felt heard and valued. One day, as he walked through the terminal of his airline's main hub, he noticed a young flight attendant struggling with a large stack of passenger itineraries. Without hesitation, Omar stepped in to help. "Here, let me take some of those," he said, grabbing half the stack. The flight attendant looked up in surprise. "Mr. Khalid, you don't have to do that." Omar smiled. "It's no trouble. We're all in this together, right?" Her face lit up with gratitude. "Thank you. That means a lot." Moments like these were what defined Omar's leadership style: genuine, humble, and deeply committed to the well-being of his team. As the months turned into years, Omar's airline became a symbol of hope and progress. Passenger satisfaction soared, employee morale reached new heights, and the airline's financial performance exceeded expectations. But for Omar, the true measure of success was the stories he heard from passengers and employees whose lives had been touched by his work. One such story came from a young woman named Aisha, who had been inspired by Omar's journey to pursue a career in aviation. She wrote him a heartfelt letter, thanking him for showing her that anything was possible. "I used to think that people like me didn't belong in this industry," Aisha wrote. "But your story changed that. You showed me that we have a place here, and now I'm training to become a pilot. Thank you for being my inspiration." Omar read the letter with a lump in his throat. This was why he had fought so hard. For people like Aisha, for everyone who had ever felt excluded or underestimated. As Omar stood in the courtyard of his airline's headquarters one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and orange, he felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been long and challenging, filled with moments of doubt and hardship. But it had also been deeply rewarding, a testament to the power of resilience and the strength of a shared vision. Mia, his closest confidant and right-hand leader in the airline's operations, approached him with 2 cups of coffee. "Reflecting again?" she teased, handing him a cup. Omar chuckled. "You know me too well." She smiled. "You've come so far, Omar. And you've brought so many people along with you. That's what makes this special." "It's not just about me," Omar said, gazing out at the horizon. "It's about all of us, everyone who believed in this vision, who made it their own." Mia nodded. "And that's why it worked." As the stars began to twinkle above, Omar felt a deep sense of gratitude, for the journey, for the people who had supported him, and for the opportunity to make a difference. "This is just the beginning," he said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "There's still so much more to do." And with that, he turned back toward the building, ready to embrace whatever challenges and opportunities lay ahead. Omar's vision for his airline continued to expand, fueled by the momentum of his initial success. But he knew there were still obstacles to overcome. Transforming the industry wasn't just about creating change within his own company, it was about setting an example that others would follow. To achieve that, Omar needed to ensure his airline became the gold standard for customer service, inclusivity, and innovation. One of his most ambitious initiatives was the creation of a passenger advocacy program, designed to give customers a direct voice in shaping their travel experience. The program allowed passengers to submit feedback and suggestions that were reviewed by a dedicated team of advocates. Omar wanted his airline to be the first to truly listen to its customers and act on their needs. "We're not just running a business," Omar explained during a team meeting. "We're building trust. And that starts with showing our passengers that their voices matter." The program was an immediate success. Passengers appreciated the opportunity to be heard, and the airline quickly gained a reputation for its responsiveness and willingness to adapt. Suggestions from passengers led to tangible improvements, from more comfortable seating arrangements to enhanced in-flight entertainment options. But for Omar, the most meaningful feedback came from those who had experienced discrimination in the past. A passenger named Rashid wrote to thank him for the changes he had implemented, sharing his story of being profiled at another airline and how different his experience had been with Omar's company. "For the first time, I felt like I belonged," Rashid wrote. "Thank you for showing me that change is possible." As the airline's reputation grew, so did Omar's influence. Industry leaders began to take notice of his approach, and several reached out to collaborate on broader initiatives to improve the passenger experience. Omar welcomed these opportunities, knowing that real change required collective effort. One such collaboration was with a coalition of airlines working to improve accessibility for passengers with disabilities. Omar's airline became a leader in the initiative, introducing features like wheelchair-friendly boarding processes, sensory kits for passengers with autism, and in-flight safety videos available in sign language. These changes aren't just about compliance, Omar said during a press conference announcing the initiative. They're about creating a travel experience that respects and celebrates everyone's unique needs. The initiative received widespread praise, and Omar's airline became a model for accessibility in the industry. But Omar was quick to share credit with his team, emphasizing that the progress they had made was a collective effort. "This isn't just my vision," he told them during a company town hall. "It's ours. And together we're proving that kindness, respect, and innovation can redefine what it means to travel." Despite the airline's success, Omar knew there were still challenges to face. Not everyone in the industry was supportive of his vision, and there were those who saw his approach as a threat to the status quo. Competitors began to spread rumors about his leadership, questioning his motives and casting doubt on the sustainability of his business model. Omar faced these attacks with characteristic grace, refusing to be drawn into negativity. Instead, he focused on letting the results speak for themselves. Under his leadership, the airline's revenue continued to grow, and customer satisfaction ratings reached record highs. But the criticism took a personal toll. One evening, as Omar reviewed financial reports in his office, he felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The weight of the responsibility he had taken on, coupled with the constant scrutiny, was beginning to wear him down. Mia, who had stopped by to drop off some documents, noticed the tension in his posture. "Hey," she said gently, sitting across from him. "What's going on?" Omar sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's just a lot. The pressure, the expectations, it feels like I can't let my guard down for even a second." Mia nodded, her expression understanding. "You're carrying a lot, Omar. But you don't have to do it alone. You've got a whole team behind you, people who believe in what you're doing and want to help." Her words were a reminder of the support system Omar had built. He wasn't in this fight alone, and he needed to lean on the people around him to keep moving forward. "Thanks, Mia," he said, his voice soft but sincere. "I needed to hear that." Reinvigorated by Mia's encouragement, Omar doubled down on his efforts. He began working more closely with his leadership team, delegating responsibilities and empowering them to take ownership of key initiatives. This not only lightened his workload but also allowed his team to grow and thrive. One of the most significant projects during this time was the airline's environmental sustainability initiative. Omar had always been passionate about protecting the planet, and he saw an opportunity to lead the industry in adopting greener practices. The initiative included transitioning to more fuel-efficient aircraft, reducing single-use plastics on flights, and partnering with carbon offset programs to minimize the airline's environmental impact. Omar also invested in research and development to explore the feasibility of alternative fuel sources for aviation. "This isn't just about doing what's right for the environment," Omar explained during a stakeholder meeting. "It's about ensuring the future of our industry and our world." The initiative was ambitious, but it quickly gained traction. Passengers appreciated the airline's commitment to sustainability, and the changes resonated with younger travelers who prioritized environmental responsibility. As the years went by, Omar's airline became a shining example of what was possible when leadership prioritized people over profits. The changes he had implemented not only improved the passenger experience but also inspired a cultural shift within the industry. Competitors began adopting similar practices, recognizing the value of treating customers and employees with respect and dignity. For Omar, the true measure of success wasn't the accolades or financial gains, it was the stories of lives changed by his work. One such story came from Carla, the security officer who had once admitted to profiling passengers. She had since become a passionate advocate for inclusivity, using her platform to educate others about the importance of fair treatment. Carla wrote Omar a heartfelt letter, thanking him for opening her eyes and giving her the tools to grow. "You didn't just change the industry," she wrote. "You changed me. And I'll spend the rest of my career making sure no one else has to feel the way you did." Omar read the letter with a sense of profound gratitude. Moments like these reminded him why he had started this journey, and why it was worth every challenge and sacrifice. The culmination of Omar's work came at an industry awards ceremony, where he was honored with the Aviation Leadership Award for his contributions to inclusivity, innovation, and sustainability. The event was attended by leaders from around the world, many of whom had been inspired by Omar's vision. As he stepped onto the stage to accept the award, Omar felt a surge of emotion. He thought back to the day he had been humiliated at the airport, the moment that had sparked his journey. Standing there now, he realized how far he had come, and how far the industry had come with him. "Thank you," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This award isn't just for me, it's for everyone who believed in the power of change. It's for the passengers who shared their stories, the employees who embraced a new way of thinking, and the leaders who dared to dream of something better." He paused, looking out at the audience. "This journey hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. And as I stand here tonight, I'm reminded that the work isn't finished. There's still so much more to do, and I'm ready to keep going." The room erupted into applause, a standing ovation that seemed to last forever. Omar felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that his efforts had made a difference, and that his story was far from over. The applause from the award ceremony still echoed in Omar's mind as he returned to his office the following week. The recognition had been gratifying, but it also served as a reminder of the responsibility he carried. His work wasn't just about running a successful airline, it was about leading a movement for fairness, inclusion, and innovation in the aviation industry. Omar sat at his desk, surrounded by letters from passengers, employees, and industry leaders, all thanking him for his vision and leadership. Each message was a testament to the impact he had made, but one letter stood out. It was from Khalid, a young boy who had written about his dream of becoming a pilot. "I used to be scared to even go to the airport because of how people looked at me and my family," the letter read. "But now, when I see your airline, I feel like there's a place for us. Thank you for making me believe I can fly someday." Omar smiled, deeply moved by the letter. He decided to write back to Khalid, encouraging him to pursue his dream and letting him know that the airline would be there to support him every step of the way. "You've got what it takes, Khalid," Omar wrote. "Never stop believing in yourself, and know that the skies are open for everyone." Omar's commitment to inclusivity extended to his hiring practices. He implemented programs to recruit and mentor underrepresented groups in the aviation industry, including women, people of color, and those from marginalized communities. The airline became a leader in diversity, not just in its workforce but also in its leadership. One of the most inspiring success stories came from Aisha, a young woman who had joined the airline as part of its pilot training program. Aisha had faced countless challenges and doubters, but her determination and skill had earned her a place in the cockpit. The day Aisha completed her first solo flight as a captain, Omar made sure to be there to celebrate. "You've done something incredible," he told her as they stood on the tarmac. "And you're just getting started?" Aisha smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "I couldn't have done it without this program, and without your belief in people like me." "It's not just about belief," Omar said. "It's about creating opportunities. And you've proven what's possible when people are given the chance to succeed." As the airline continued to thrive, Omar began looking for ways to expand its reach and impact. He launched new routes to underserved regions, ensuring that communities often overlooked by major airlines had access to affordable and reliable air travel. One of these new routes was to a remote village in East Africa, where the airline partnered with local organizations to provide medical supplies and educational resources. The initiative was part of Omar's broader mission to use aviation as a force for good, connecting people and communities in meaningful ways. During a visit to the village to oversee the project, Omar was struck by the gratitude of the local residents. Children ran up to him, laughing and playing, while elders thanked him for bringing much-needed resources to their community. "This is why we do what we do," Omar said to his team as they boarded the plane back home. "It's not just about moving people, it's about changing lives." But not everyone was supportive of Omar's efforts. As his airline grew in prominence, so did the criticism from those who resisted change. Some competitors accused him of being too idealistic, arguing that his focus on inclusivity and social responsibility would ultimately hurt the bottom line. Omar faced these attacks head-on, refusing to compromise his values. He knew that his approach wasn't just the right thing to do, it was also good for business. The airline's record-high customer satisfaction ratings and financial success were proof of that. In one particularly heated industry panel, a rival executive challenged Omar's approach, dismissing it as unsustainable. "You might be popular now," the executive said, his tone condescending. "But let's see how long you can keep this up. Business is about profits, not ideals." Omar responded calmly, his voice steady. "Business is about people. And when you take care of people, your passengers, your employees, your partners, the profits follow. I don't just believe that. I've proven it." The room erupted in applause and the rival executive sat back, clearly outmatched. Omar's unwavering confidence and results-driven approach had silenced his critics once again. Despite the challenges, Omar remained focused on the future. He knew that true transformation required more than just short-term success. It required building a legacy that would endure for generations. To that end, he established the Omar Khalid Aviation Scholarship Fund, dedicated to supporting young people from underprivileged backgrounds who aspired to careers in aviation. The scholarship fund quickly became one of the most impactful initiatives of Omar's career. It provided not just financial support but also mentorship and training opportunities, ensuring that recipients had the tools they needed to succeed. One of the first scholarship recipients was a young man named Faisal, who dreamed of becoming an aerospace engineer. Faisal's passion for aviation had been sparked by a childhood fascination with airplanes, but financial barriers had always stood in his way. With the scholarship, Faisal was able to enroll in a top engineering program and pursue his dream. He later wrote to Omar expressing his gratitude. "You've given me a chance I never thought I'd have," Faisal wrote. "Thank you for believing in me and for showing me that anything is possible." As Omar reflected on his journey, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. The airline had become more than a business. It was a movement, a symbol of what could be achieved when people came together with a shared vision and purpose. But Omar knew the work wasn't finished. There were still barriers to break, lives to touch, and industries to transform. He remained as committed as ever to his mission, driven by the belief that change was always possible, no matter how daunting the odds. One evening, as he stood on the balcony of his home, watching the city lights twinkle below, Mia joined him with 2 cups of tea. "Still dreaming big?" she asked with a smile. "Always," Omar replied, taking a sip of tea. "There's so much more to do. But it's not just about me anymore. It's about everyone who's joined this journey, everyone who's believed in what we're building." Mia nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "You've created something incredible, Omar. And you've inspired so many people along the way." "It's not just about inspiration," Omar said. "It's about action. And as long as there's work to be done, I'll keep going." As the stars twinkled above them, Omar felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had also been deeply rewarding. He knew that the best was yet to come, and he was ready to embrace it.